Okay, beta, let's discuss speed time graphs, right? Speed time graphs. So beta, in this chapter we would be looking at speed of an object, right, over a period of time, how speed varies over a period of time. Clarity beta? Acha. Beta, just remember two things, two important points. Point number one, beta, gradient of a speed time graph gives acceleration. Better remember that. ठीक हो गया? Gradient of a speed time graph gives acceleration. And beta, point number two, beta, area under a speed time graph gives distance traveled. Right beta? Just remember these 2 points, right? Point number one, beta, when we'll take a gradient of a line, right, in a speed time graph, beta, this would give you the acceleration of that part of the journey. Clarity? And when you take area under a speed time graph of a let's say specific part of a journey, right, that would give you the distance traveled, right? For example, if you have to find the distance traveled for the first 10 seconds, simply take area under the graph till 10 seconds. You'll get the distance traveled. If you want to calculate the distance traveled for the whole journey, beta, find the area under the graph of the entire graph, right? Under the entire graph. Clarity? Okay. Beta, these are the only two important points in this chapter. ठीक हो गया? Let's take a look at a speed time graph. Let's make a speed time graph. So this is your y-axis. Beta, this is your x-axis, right? So let's make a graph, beta. Chalo. This line, then you have this portion, and then you have this portion. Acha beta, zara let's discuss this. ठीक? So this is your y-axis, this is your x-axis, right? On y-axis, obviously you have speed, normally beta meters per second, and if it's kilometers per hour, then time will be in hours, right? So on x-axis beta, you'll have time in seconds, right? Standard units meters per second, right? Agar kilometers per hour hoga, phir time will be in hours. Okay. So beta, let's label the phases as well, part of the journey. So let's say this is the origin, part A, this is point B, and this is point C, right? So beta, let's take a look at the first part of the journey, OA, right? So we have to look first beta, we have to look at the gradient of the line in that part of the journey, right? If it's a speed time graph. So beta, mujhe batao, again, OA, it's a straight line. So there are infinite number of points on this line, right beta? So you take any point of the line, including the first point and the last point. If you take O, because point O also lies on the same straight line, or you take A, the last point on that line. It's a part of that line, right beta? So gradient of a straight line, we know it's constant throughout, right? So again, first thing is it has a constant gradient. Clarity beta? So gradient of a straight line of a speed time graph gives us the acceleration, right beta? So we can clearly see it has a positive gradient. So this part of the journey OA, right? So beta, speed time graph of this part, this shows a constant acceleration, right beta? Because gradient of a speed time graph gives us acceleration. Because the gradient is constant, so this shows us constant acceleration. इसमें कोई doubt beta? Clarity? ठीक हो गया? चलो. Now we look at the part of the journey AB. अब जरा मुझे बताओ. Let's say for example, इधर बेटा कोई obviously speed की value है. Let's say V1, right? Beta, we can see ke from A to B, this line is parallel to x-axis. So zero gradient. Zero gradient. Because when a line is parallel to x-axis, obviously there is no slope. What do you mean by zero gradient? ये जरा मुझे बताओ. What do you mean by zero gradient? That means zero acceleration. Because gradient of a speed time graph gives us acceleration. But from this part of the journey, the object is not accelerating, zero acceleration, but it's still moving beta. इसको आपने mix नहीं करना distance time graph से. Because in a distance time graph, when this kind of portion comes in, where line is parallel to x-axis, beta, that means distance travel नहीं हो रहा, right? Time is still going on, experiment is going on, but distance travel नहीं हो रहा. So that means the object is at rest. But in a speed time graph beta, right, time is going on and obviously एक speed आपको y-axis पे show रही है. This means the car or the object is moving at a constant speed. Please remember that. Yes, the gradient is zero. The gradient is zero. That means zero acceleration, but still the object is moving. Let's say if it's a car, the car is moving, right? So beta इसको mix नहीं करना distance time graph के concept से. Clarity? So in this part of the journey from A to B, the car or an object is moving with a constant speed. ठीक होगा? Clarity? Okay. Coming to the third part of the journey, BC. Again beta, it's a straight line. It has a slope but a negative gradient, right? And there are infinite number of points on the straight line. So again it would have a constant gradient, right? So gradient shows acceleration, but negative acceleration is what? Deceleration. So part BC of the journey would have constant, or you can say uniform deceleration beta. Deceleration. इसमें कोई doubt? Because negative acceleration is what? Deceleration. ठीक? So it is decelerating till point C, और यहाँ आके इसकी velocity zero हो जाती है. ठीक है? Clarity beta? So we have discussed in detail the three parts of journey जो कि normally आपको exams में बेटा इसके questions आते हैं. I hope this is absolutely clear. ठीक? Now let's take a look at a question. Okay beta, now let's look at our question number 1, right? It says find the acceleration when t is equal to 4, right? So beta, again we have to see it is a velocity time graph, right? It is a velocity time graph. Now this is important. And beta, all speeds are given in meters per second and time is in seconds, right beta? Speeds are in meters per second. Acha, on y-axis beta, you're looking at velocity. It's you're given velocity. So beta, velocity and speed are the same thing. Velocity is, beta, what is velocity? It is actually speed with direction in a particular direction, right? ठीक होगा बेटा? Velocity is what? Speed with direction, speed in a particular direction. So basically when you're taking speed with direction, that becomes velocity. Clarity? So if the whole part of the graph is above x-axis, that means beta, you're traveling in one direction. ठीक है? So इसको confuse नहीं करना कि we are discussing speed time graphs, so why this is velocity. So because the whole of the graph is above x-axis, but that means we are taking one direction. ठीक है? So velocity means सिर्फ you're taking speed with direction. So nothing to worry about. So the only point is, but if the whole of the graph is above x-axis, that means we are in one direction. ठीक है? The object is moving in a single direction. Clarity? ठीक हो गया? Okay. So beta, we can see it's a velocity time graph. ठीक? So आपको बेटा speed सारी की सारी given है because direction है, so velocities है, but हम इसकी magnitude की बात करेंगे, right? So obviously that is 15 meters per second. ठीक? ये जो constant area जहाँ से start हो रहा है, that is the only value given. Times बेटा on x-axis 10 seconds, 40 seconds and 60 seconds. Okay, perfectly fine. So what is the first part? Find the acceleration when t is equal to 4 seconds. ठीक, let's say there is some t 4 seconds and you have to find the acceleration at t is equal to 4 seconds. So beta, we've already discussed, let's solve a part. That gradient of a speed time graph or a velocity time graph, it gives us acceleration. ठीक हो गया? So in other words, we have to find the gradient at t is equal to 4 seconds. इसमें कोई डाउट किसी को? ठीक, because the gradient of a speed time graph, this would give us acceleration at t is equal to 4 seconds, right beta? अब जरा मुझे बताओ, how do you find the gradient at t is equal to 4 seconds? But again, it's a straight line. Any point of that line, including the first point and the last point, as we've already discussed beta, and obviously including this point जिस पे examiner is asking for the gradient, all these points, they lie on the same straight line. And beta, we know that the gradient of a straight line, it is same throughout. So you find the gradient at t is equal to 4 seconds, or you find the gradient at t is equal to 10 seconds, right? Or you find the gradient at t is equal to 6 seconds, it will be the same. So the concept should be absolutely clear, right? So in other words, beta, we just need to find the gradient of the line from 0 to 10 seconds. That would be the same gradient at t is equal to 4 seconds. I hope this is absolutely clear. ठीक है? Because in the middle of the line, beta, हमें accurate values नहीं given. We cannot calculate the gradient exactly at t is equal to 4 seconds. Now this is the point you have to notice. Because इसमें हमें values, it's not a proper grid, right? जिसमें the whole of the y-axis is labeled and the whole of the x-axis is labeled, and there are, you know, you can accurately read from the graph. No, you cannot accurately read from the graph. So there is a value in the middle and you cannot, you know, have accurate values. Clarity beta? So what concept we'll use? Beta, the concept is, because the gradient of the line is same, so you can take whatever values on that line you have to calculate the gradient. ठीक है, चलो हम जरा gradient calculate करते हैं. So बेटा, I can see एक तो ये initial point given है 0 0, right? जहाँ से origin से start हो रहा है, और एक बेटा I have this point, ये जो end point है line पे, इसके coordinates क्या होंगे? First you write the x coordinate and then you write the y coordinate 10 15. इस लास्ट पॉइंट के कोऑर्डिनेट्स, इसमें कोई डाउट? क्लैरिटी बेटा, आई एम ट्राइंग टू कैलकुलेट द ग्रेडियंट. सो ग्रेडियंट का फॉर्मूला, सो दिस मींस एक कोऑर्डिनेट आ गया 0 0 ओरिजिन, और एक बिल्कुल, यू जस्ट नीड 2 पॉइंट्स ऑन अ स्ट्रेट लाइन टू कैलकुलेट द ग्रेडियंट, और एक बेटा आ गया ये एंड वाला 10 15, राइट? व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू डू इज कैलकुलेटिंग द ग्रेडियंट ऑफ दैट लाइन. चलो, यू जस्ट नीड एनी 2 पॉइंट्स. ठीक, चलो इसका ग्रेडियंट जरा फाइंड करते हैं. So what was the formula for the gradient? Beta, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? Rise over run. चलो जरा find करो gradient. So this is 15 minus 0 over 10 minus 0, right? So gradient क्या आ गया बेटा? 15 over 10, which is 1.5, right? So we know that gradient of a speed time graph or a velocity time graph, this gives you the acceleration. So beta, acceleration at t is equal to 4 seconds क्या होगा? We'll just write acceleration at t is equal to 4 seconds. beta कितनी आ गई? This is 1.5 meters per second square. Complete units लिखने, because the gradient of the line is 1.5, and we know that gradient of a speed time graph or velocity time graph, this gives you the acceleration. I hope this is absolutely clear. ठीक हो गया बेटा? इसमें कोई डाउट किसी को? Clarity? चलो, second part, the total distance traveled, right? The total distance traveled. चलो बेटा, so again you have to find the area under the whole curve. Simple as that. You have to find the area under the whole graph. Sorry, I said curve. Area under the whole graph. Clarity beta? ठीक हो गया? So how do you find the area of this graph? बेटा इट्स अ ट्रेपीजियम. चलो हम ट्रेपीजियम का फॉर्मूला लगा देते हैं. सो बेसिकली I'll just make this figure again. So beta, basically what we have is, we have this graph, right? So if you just plug in the values, beta, this is 60, right? This is 60 seconds. So आपके पास one of the parallel sides is 60. इसमें कोई doubt? Let's take a look at the other parallel side. ठीक. So बेटा यहां से लेके this value till this value, ये जरा मुझे बताओ कितना डिस्टेंस है. So what is 40 minus 10? So this is 30. इसमें कोई डाउट? So the other parallel side is 30, right? And what is the height of this trapezium? The perpendicular distance between the two parallel sides? हाँ जी बेटा, you can directly read from the y-axis. So the height is beta 15. The height is 15. इसमें कोई डाउट किसी को? क्लैरिटी? ठीक हो गया? So बेटा height आपके पास कितनी है? 15 of this trapezium. So what is the area of this trapezium beta? How do you find the area of this trapezium? So beta, area of this trapezium will be half sum of parallel sides into height. बेटा mensuration में बड़ा डिटेल में हमने इसको डिस्कस किया है. If you haven't seen that video, बेटा go and watch that video. Very very important and crucial video to develop your concepts. चलो half, बेटा sum of parallel sides. So this is 60 plus 30, and what is the height? This is 15, right बेटा? चलो just plug in these values. 60 plus 30 is 90 into 15. और बेटा tell me what is the answer. Calculator से जरा calculate करो. So beta, this is 675 meters. So the distance traveled, beta, for the whole journey is 675 meters. इसमें कोई doubt? I hope this is absolutely clear. And obviously beta, अगर आपने if you want to break this figure into 3 portions, perfectly fine. The first one will be a triangle, the second will be a rectangle, and the third will be again a triangle. Yes, you can break the figure, the graph, into 3 parts, and you can find the area under the graph individually, and then you add the 3 areas. That is again perfectly fine. But again, this would be a bit lengthy. Again, the best approach is the simplest approach. Keep your questions simple, right, and compact. So anyway, you can add the 3 areas, and you can simply add them to get the total distance traveled. ठीक हो गया बेटा? Okay. Final part, the average speed for the whole journey. ठीक है? चलो अब जरा मुझे बताओ, what is the formula for the average speed? ये जरा मुझे बताओ. Average speed बेटा. चलो. Total distance over total time. ठीक है बेटा? We have just calculated the total distance, 675 meters, and beta, what is the total time for the journey? We can clearly see on x-axis 60 seconds, right? So just divide this by 60 और जरा मुझे आंसर बताओ. So बेटा क्या आंसर आ गया? 11.25 meters per second, right beta? So again we have to give our answers to 3 significant figures. So beta, you just have to look at the 4th one. If it's 5 or greater than 5, तो previous में एक add कर दो. So this will be 11.3 meters per second. Clarity beta? So beta, this was all about this question. But बड़े simple, straightforward questions आते हैं. You just have to apply the concepts. हमने बड़ी detail में बेटा सारी discussions की हुई हैं. Gradients का concept बेटा, but remember again these 2 points कि बेटा speed time graph में the gradient of a speed time graph, this gives acceleration, and area under a speed time graph, this gives distance traveled. Clarity? ठीक हो गया? Okay beta, let's take a look at our question number 2, right beta? So again, all speeds are given in meters per second, right? And obviously time is in seconds. Clarity beta? ठीक हो गया? अच्छा जी, let's read the question. Find the total distance traveled. Again, it's a velocity time graph. Clarity beta? we are considering direction as well. So again, this is all one direction, right? Because the graph is above x-axis. ठीक हो गया? So the total distance traveled. So beta, what is the concept of total distance traveled? Simply area under the graph. ठीक? So beta, if you look at the graph, obviously there is one triangle, right? And then you have a rectangle, and then you have a trapezium, right? You have two parallel sides and you have a trapezium. So what I'll do is I'll make two trapezium. The first one, ठीक है, to make the figure easy, and you know, better make the questions as compact as possible, ठीक है? So and then I'll take the second trapezium, ठीक? चलो. So first trapezium, beta, what are the two parallel sides? So 30 minus 10, this will be 20, right beta? And this will be, this length will be, which I have just made an arrow, this is 30, right? ठीक हो गया? चलो. And the height obviously is 10. So the total distance traveled is obviously area under the graph, right? Because area under a speed time graph, velocity time graph, it gives you the distance traveled. So area under the graph, right beta? Chalo. So half sum of parallel sides. So 30 plus 20 multiply by height, which is 10. So ये तो बेटा आ गया first 30 seconds का, plus okay बेटा next 20 seconds जरा देखते हैं. So this portion, right? Now it's kind of a vertical trapezium, right beta? So this will be the height, the perpendicular distance between the parallel sides. So height is how much? Height is 20, right beta? So this is what? This is 10 and this is 25, right? Parallel sides are 10 and 25. So half sum of parallel sides 10 plus 25, and the height is 20. The perpendicular distance between the two parallel sides. इसमें कोई doubt बेटा? ठीक है? चलो. Just simply solve the brackets. So ये बेटा आ गया 50 into 10 plus ये बेटा आपके पास आ गया 35, right बेटा, into 20, right? So this is actually 500 over 2, ठीक है? और बेटा ये जरा मुझे सॉल्व करके बताओ. 700 over 2, right beta? So basically, which is the denominator will be 2, the LCM will be 2. So this will be 1200 over 2, right beta? Which is 600 meters, right? So beta, the distance traveled is 600 meters, right? Because the standard units were meters per second. So distance will be in meters. इसमें कोई doubt beta? Clarity? Okay beta, now the second part. The distance traveled in the first 40 seconds, right? So let me just erase beta whatever we have just labeled, so that there is no confusion in the second part. Okay. Now this is the question in front of you. The distance traveled in the first 40 seconds. So let's say this is 40, right? So again, beta, for distance traveled, we need to find the area under the graph, right? But we don't have the value from the y-axis. Beta, we don't know this value, right? So if you want to find again the distance in the first 40 seconds, beta, you need to have area under the graph. So yes, the first trapezium, we have already calculated the area till 30 seconds, and beta, that was this 250 meters, right? The first part. Yes, we have the area of the first 30 seconds, right? Area under the graph. So distance traveled in the first 30 seconds, yes. What about the distance for the beta next 10 seconds? ये मुझे बताओ कैसे calculate करेंगे? Because you don't have the value of y corresponding to 40 seconds. You don't have speed corresponding to 40 seconds. So ये value हम कैसे calculate करेंगे? ये मुझे बताओ. because again this is not an actual graph. Beta, you cannot read perfectly from the graph, from the x and y axis, right? It's kind of a sketch, it's kind of a rough graph beta given, so you cannot read inside the graph, right? You can just read whatever direct values you're given. So ये मुझे बताओ, how do you find area of this shaded green trapezium? Because yes, you have the height which is 10 of this trapezium, one parallel side is 10, but what about this pink line? What about the length of this pink line? ये हम कैसे calculate करेंगे? In other words, what is this speed? ये जो मैंने question mark किया है, what is this speed? Let's say v1, हम v1 label कर देते हैं. What is this speed v1? That would be the height, right, or you can say the length of the other parallel side. ये जो मैंने pink line बनाई, draw की है, ये मुझे बताओ, how would you find this? Again beta, a concept of coordinate geometry, very simple concept, सबको आता है. Gradient calculate करना सबको आता है. It's all about application of the concepts. ठीक है बेटा? It's all about application of the concepts. It's all about understanding of the concepts. ठीक है? So beta, again, अब ध्यान से मेरी बात सुनो. How do you find this value of v1 at this point? ठीक है? यानी in other words, y की value corresponding to the value of 40. ये जो x पे value x axis पे 40 आ रही है. ये जो मैंने question mark draw किया. ये point कैसे हम find करेंगे बेटा value? ठीक है? How would you find this? मैं आपको बताता हूँ. But we already have, can we find the gradient of this line? Because whatever the gradient of this line is, this point v1, right, हमने इसको v1 label कर दिया है, this point v1, ठीक, is also lying on this line, ठीक, ये जो point है, इसके coordinates क्या है? Let's write down the coordinates of this point. This is 40 and v1, right? First you write the x coordinate and then you write the y coordinate. Let's say the y coordinate is v1. ठीक, ऐसे ही. So this point is also lying on the same straight line. पहले तो मुझे बताओ what is the gradient of this line? Let's find out the gradient. Let's say this is the line. So बेटा इस point के coordinates हैं, we can see first the x coordinate 30 and 10. इसमें कोई doubt? So इस point के coordinates है बेटा 30 and 10. And the other point, the coordinates we've written 40 and v1, right? And we have a point जिसके coordinates बेटा हैं end point के coordinates है 50 and 25. 50 and 25, right? So end point के coordinates क्या है बेटा? 50 and 25. First you write the x coordinate and then you write the y coordinate. ऐसे ही है, ठीक है? First point and last point on that line are given. ठीक? Middle में एक point है, let's say 40 and v1. So we have to find the value of v1, जो कि इसका y coordinate है, right? So बेटा we use the concept of gradient because every point on this line will have the same gradient. इसमें कोई doubt? Please remember this concept. चलो जरा मुझे इसका gradient बताओ. Gradient क्या होगा? Again y2 minus y1, 25 minus 10 over x2 minus x1, 50 minus 30, right beta? So what is this? 25 minus 10, 15 over, what is 50 minus 30 over 20, right? So 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4 is 20. So the gradient is 3 over 4. इसमें कोई doubt beta, right? Clarity? So the gradient of this line is 3 over 4. Now we'll again apply the concept of gradient, but using the points, any 2 points, but involving beta 40 and v1 also. You can use either of the 2 points. So let's use 40 and v1 and 30 and 10 and again find the gradient. चलो again gradient का formula क्या होता है? y2 minus y1, so v1 minus 10 over x2 minus x1. So that would be beta x2 minus x1 क्या आ जाएगा? 40 minus 30, right? But you know the gradient of the straight line. You've just calculated the gradient of the straight line बेटा इसको इसके इक्वल पुट कर दो. That is how you find the y coordinate. और बेटा ये बड़ा कॉमन क्वेश्चन आता है एग्जाम्स में, and the students they get confused. They just write estimated values and the question will be wrong, right? So again बेटा इसको gradient के concept से हम इसको attempt करते हैं, right? Because 2 points on the line are given, you just simply find the gradient. It would hardly take 10 seconds. And then again use the concept of gradient involving that point जिसका y coordinate आपने find करना है with any of the 2 points, right? I've chose the simpler coordinates ताकि आपकी calculation simple हो जाए. But I hope this is absolutely clear. चलो, what is 40 minus 30? V1 minus 10. 40 minus 30 is 10. चलो क्रॉस मल्टीप्लाई कर दो. So V1 minus 10 is equal to 10 into 3 over 4. Right बेटा? ठीक हो गया? So V1 कितना आ गया? This is 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 5 is 10. This is 15 over 2. Minus 10 हो जाके क्या हो जाएगा? Add. Right? So 15 over 2 is what? 15 का half is what बेटा? 7.5 plus 10. So बेटा velocity आ गई आपकी at that point, that is 17.5 meters per second. ठीक है? इसमें कोई doubt? So this value V1 is, now that we have calculated beta, now we can write this is how much? 17.5 meters per second. Now you can write this is 17.5 meters per second, right? Clarity? So अब आपके पास आ गई this is 17.5, the height of the other parallel line. Now you can find the area under this trapezium, area of this trapezium. Clarity बेटा? ठीक हो गया? So distance traveled in the first 40 seconds कितना आ गया? ठीक है? First 30 seconds का तो already बेटा हमने calculate किया हुआ है. ठीक है? First 30 seconds का कितना था? 500 over 2, right? So distance traveled, ठीक? So आपके पास बेटा आ जाएगा 500 over 2 first 30 seconds का plus for the next बेटा 10 seconds again trapezium का formula लगाओ, half sum of parallel sides 10 plus 17.5, ठीक है? half sum of parallel sides which is 10 plus 17.5. Clarity बेटा? ठीक है? यही बन रहे हैं ना parallel sides. One is this parallel side बेटा and the other is this, ये जो पिंक से हमने अभी जिसकी हमने ये फाइंड किया है 17.5, right? And the height is the distance between the two parallel sides, that is 40 minus 30 which is 10. इसमें कोई डाउट? and the height is also 10. ठीक हो गया बेटा? चलो ये तो है 250 प्लस, इसको जरा मुझे बताओ व्हाट इज द आंसर? 2 times 5 is 10 और बेटा ये आ गया 27.5 into 5, राइट? जरा ये मुझे ऐड करके बताओ व्हाट इज द आंसर? सो बेटा टोटल आ रहा है 387.5 मीटर्स, राइट बेटा? इसमें कोई डाउट किसी को? एनी एम्बिग्विटीज, एनी कंफ्यूजन, राइट? कि बेटा हाउ डिड वी फाइंड the distance traveled for the first 40 seconds? It should be absolutely clear now. ठीक हो गया? बड़ी थॉरो हमने डिस्कशंस कर ली. A very common question that comes in exams. ठीक? और लास्ट पार्ट बेटा, the acceleration when t is equal to 15 seconds. So t is equal to 15 seconds पे बेटा acceleration is what? Gradient of a velocity time graph. तो बेटा we can see that the line is parallel to x-axis. So acceleration is 0. Acceleration will be 0. इसमें कोई डाउट किसी को? ठीक? ठीक है ना बेटा? Because the line is parallel to x-axis. So any point on the line from t is equal to 10 seconds till t is equal to 30 seconds inclusive, ठीक है बेटा? The gradient will be 0 because the line is parallel to x-axis. So gradient of a speed time graph, your velocity time graph, beta, it reflects the acceleration, right? So again, this means the object or the car is moving with a constant velocity, with a constant speed, because we are taking direction as well. So it's moving in the same direction, तो स्पीड इन अ पर्टिकुलर डायरेक्शन हम उसको वेलोसिटी कह देते हैं. So it's moving with, let's say, 10 meters per second, right? But anyway, the acceleration will be 0. ठीक हो गया बेटा? So I hope beta the concept of a speed time graph is absolutely clear. I hope there are no ambiguities. ठीक है बेटा? No confusions. But if there are some beta, please do tell me in the comments. ठीक है?